I'm Lee Maher. Welcome to my Common Sense Living podcast, where I'll add common sense and value to your life. Get a pen and paper, because you're going to want to take notes today. I have a special guest, Christopher Lee Maher, and apologize if I don't say your name right. So Christopher is a former U.S. Navy SEAL who endured intense physical, mental, and emotional stress as a U.S. Navy SEAL and as a child. By combining a SEAL team mindset with modern stress resolution strategies, Christopher taught himself to free his body, mind, and emotions from pain, tension, and emotional distortion by developing subtractive tools for eliminating these issues. He studied traditional Chinese medical practices at the Pacific College of Oriental Medicine and at Yosan University before continuing his studies at the Universal Healing Tao system. So with that intro, let's get started, Christopher.
Okay, let's get after it. What's going on? It's a very broad question. And since it's broad, I can go any direction that I want, right?
Well, you're free. It's your floor.
Well, what's going on? A woman who's very important to me, her name's Martha Riggleman. She has had some heart issues, and she fell down the steps and cracked 3 ribs. So, stress obviously is a part of getting older, right? You age, you get more stress, you get more tense. The challenge is when you get more stress and you get more tense as you age, you lose balance, right?
In all aspects.
In all aspects. But mostly I want to talk about people lose balance physically. And then when you start getting older, you lose balance physically, you open yourself up to dramatic injury, right? Breaking a hip, cracking a few ribs, concussion, all kinds of things. And so I think it's important as people, for the listeners, to understand that the things that are in your body, if you avoid taking care of them now, they will eventually end up as a problem in your life, right? And so again, the things that you avoid taking care of now will eventually end up being dramatic expressions and symptoms at some point in your life. And for some people, that's going to be a heart attack. Other people, that's going to be cancer. Other people, that's going to be a loss of fixed focus, right? They're going to have a non-fixed focus. So they're going to be dealing with dementia or any one of these kinds of dramatic things that we see happening everywhere in the public. And so stress is a misunderstood topic, because people, they never get any further than, I feel stressed. So what you have in society are a few lanes, right? You have those who are in stress ignorance, who will eventually end up with a symptom and not know how they got it, right? They go to the doctor, they're 46 years old, they don't have any pain in their body. The wife says, hey, look, I want you to go get a checkup. You haven't had a checkup in 3 years. Or their life insurance company goes, hey, you need to go have a checkup. And they go in, and doc does some blood work. Blood work comes back, and they go, hey, Michael, why don't you come down to my office and bring your wife?
Oh boy.
Brings the wife. Well, how come I need to bring my wife? Just trust me, you need to bring your wife. Comes in, doc says, look, you got 4th stage cancer, blah, 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 blah. You need to get your effects ready. These are the steps that I think you should take. I don't even know if chemotherapy is worth it. We could go through that route if you want to. And you know what? Michael is possibly dead in 6 months, right? And so what people need to understand, there's always something going on underneath, but you can always stay on top of it. And the way you stay on top of things is you interfere with your addiction to the daily acceptable drugs. That's the very first step, right? And what I mean by the daily acceptable drugs is nicotine, caffeine, alcohol, the worst, refined white and brown sugars, sugar cane, And look, if you're reading these cereal boxes and these yogurts and it says natural cane juice, look, cocaine, sugar cane, they're both highly addictive.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got recreational drugs, which is now marijuana has moved into being medicinal. Okay. And at the end of the day, it's still a drug, right? And it still creates an intense amount of harm. Now, people who are suffering from unrelenting discomfort and pain, and you don't have any other choice because you can't afford pharmaceuticals, I get it. What I want to offer to you is this. Wouldn't it be more prudent to simply remove the tension and the stress that's causing the unrelenting pain in the first place? Like, why address the symptom with a daily acceptable drug when you could easily do what? You could easily remove tension and stress from your body, and you would see an immediate reduction or dissolvement of your physical or emotional discomforts. And then what you have are what you have also are food colorings and preservatives, right? And now people who are hooked on pharmaceutical drugs. So we have a fentanyl crisis, we have a opioid crisis, we have people that are leaning on acceptable drugs in order to manage their lifetime accumulated stress loads because they're super anxious, which is emotional pain. They've got low energy, which is really basically spiritual pain, energetic pain. And then they've got some kind of physical or psychological discomfort. And people are using these substances to try to feel normal.
Yeah.
Right? They want a reprieve from the aches and the pains that they're feeling, either at a physical level, mental level, emotional level, or spiritual level. And you and I, before we started the recording, we had just a little brief conversation about what would you like to get into? And then the subject of God came up, and whether you're into meditation, right? The new age version, or you're into prayer, right? Prayer can be meditation, meditation can be prayer. And so you've got stress ignorance, and then you've got negative stress management tools, which I mentioned. And then you've got a lot of people that are suffering right now, which I deal with a lot of young men in a certain demographic that are suffering from a different kind of addiction, which is porn addiction, right? And it's rampant and it's everywhere, okay?
Right.
And think about it. A person who's highly stressed would do what? They would use the least intimate source of connection to feel connected, right? And what would be the least intimate source of connection? The least intimate source of connection would be to tuning into someone who's being sexual that you don't know.
Yeah.
Right? Well, what would be a person who was calm, grounded, and relaxed emotionally, they feel comfortable having intimate conversations with people who are in the flesh, right? They have appropriate boundaries. They understand that they want to have a deep emotional connection with someone. And so they're going to take the steps necessary to develop that connection and help themselves and this other party feel safe as they get to know each other, right? But when a person's highly stressed, the pyramid gets flipped upside down. And so instead of building through attraction and connection, and then to affection, and then to intimacy, and then the sensuality, and then to sexuality, intercourse, they do the exact opposite, right? They meet someone that they don't know at all, and they get involved in exchanging sexual energy with the perfect stranger. So they haven't built what? They haven't built the necessary amount of affection and attraction and connection and attention and intimacy and sensuality. They haven't essentially got to know the person. And so there's all these different forms of stress that people are dealing with, and they're expressing it in different ways. I was having a conversation with a peer of mine who's in the same field, and we were talking about massage parlors where men go and get, it's called a rub and tug, right? So they give you a massage, and then they get intimate with you afterwards. And he was telling me about an event that he went to, and he was circled up with a bunch of men, and it was about intimacy and honesty. And he said, yeah, I've been doing this in order to get some level of intimacy with a perfect stranger. And then almost every man in the group raised their hand.
Wow.
Okay. And it's like, so when people are highly stressed, and I'm using these extreme examples so that people understand, if you're a listener on the call, that these things are going on behind the scenes. Like when you're walking down the street or you're at the airport and the person's walking past you, you don't know that that's what's going on. But there's a whole group of men and women who are suffering needlessly from debilitating states of unresolved lifetime accumulated stress. And the question is, what do you do about this? Right? What can someone do so that they can start to feel more connected, right? Because people want to feel intimacy. Yeah. People want to feel connected. People want to feel safe. People want to feel vulnerable. And yet there's very few examples of vulnerability in a safe environment for men to pick up on, right? To then be able to use that model to develop levels of intimacy and safety within their own relationships. And so what do we do? Do we ignore? Do we continue to, push underneath the rug? Or do we do the prudent thing, which is pick up a chair, sit in front of a mirror, look deep into your own eyes, which is deep into your own soul, let your negatively conditioned personality look into the windows of your soul and start asking some deep questions. Why am I here? Could be a good start. What's keeping me from experiencing the things that I want? That might be like a next best question. Okay. What's this life all about? Okay. Why am I continuing to get in my own way? And as you start to ask these questions, as you start to ask the whys, then what opens up is a very deep relationship that you get to start to have with yourself. And if you're uncomfortable with that, right? Because look, it's in the privacy of your own home. Nobody's going to know that. You don't have to tell anyone. Okay? But I think if you're willing to ask these whys, WHYS versus WISE, which I think would be wise, as you're willing to ask those questions, I think your body and your soul is going to be willing to be really honest with you. But if you're not asking the deeper questions about life, you never start an investigation. If you don't start, and if you keep avoiding investigating who you are, why you're here, why you get in your own way, what is it that you want, why is it that you want what you want, you're never going to be able to reach out and ask for help. And the challenge is we live on a planet where people do not feel safe enough to ask for help. They do not feel safe enough to be vulnerable enough to ask the deeper questions. And once you start the investigation, you're going to start building a deep rapport with yourself. And once you start building a deep rapport with yourself, it makes it very easy to build a deep rapport with others and step into a very compassionate position. Yet if your strategy is, hey, I feel uncomfortable, where's the whiskey, right? I feel socially inept, where's the beer? I feel socially disconnected, where's the weed? I feel overwhelmed in class, where's the Xanax, right? So, and I'm giving examples of substances and examples of situations that people are in all the time. When you lean on daily acceptable drugs, you lose your opportunity to feel the true level of disconnection that you have in your life at an emotional level, which means you'll never, ever be able to resolve what you can't feel. You can numb out, yet you'll never be able to resolve. And if you can't resolve it, you'll never shift into resolution. And it'll be very difficult for you to learn who it is you are, why you're here, and why you choose to keep getting in your own way and what it is you really want from life. And so, the first step is about probably that deep, intimate conversation. And if you're someone who, as a listener, if you're someone who is participating in white and refined sugar, the reality is you have a difficult communicating your own needs to those around you who are in your sphere of influence. The sweetness of life is to share with others your desires, wants, and dreams, and then to invite them in to help you have those experiences. That's the sweetness of life. If you're unable to take even that basic step, how are you ever going to be able to access any level of vulnerability that produces a result or an experience that you're proud of, that you extract joy from, that you extract happiness from? Because it's about that vulnerability, and it's about that communication and that authentic self-expression. How are people going to do it?
You've got a lot of wisdom in there, a lot of things.
Thank you. And people want to be happy. Go ahead.
Yes, they do. How long did it take you to get where you are?
Oh, let's see. The wisdom came easy, right?
Putting it into practice is the hard part.
Yeah, because, I've always been a deep thinker. I've always been someone who's observing reality, even from a very young age. I was counseling adults on the things that I thought they should be doing. And I was always very energetically sensitive. So I could feel into people who were sad or people who were angry. And I always had a way of meeting them on their level. And the real wisdom came from me once I decided to address my pain, once I decided to bend the knee and surrender to the discomfort and reach out and ask for help. Because it's lovely to figure these things out at an emotional and psychological level. It's another thing to invite someone into your story, especially because at that time in my life, I was emotionally, but I was also physically self-reliant. And when you grow up in a household and you have childhood trauma, and then you get indoctrinated into an organization where I went to school at Milton Hershey School, or an organization like the SEAL teams, which promotes, right, a certain level of self-reliance, and you're getting positive feedback that self-reliance is the way to go, you don't understand that there's going to be limiting returns eventually on that self-reliance, and you're going to end up as a lone wolf and experiencing feelings of loneliness, even though you're surrounded by others.
Yeah. That's an empty feeling, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, you can be in a room full of people and just feel like you don't belong. I've even been in that position to a certain extent.
Yeah. And so I'm at an age, you asked me what's going on. I'm heading towards 60, right? And
you look good for that.
Thank you. When you reach the age that I am, I think there is an opportunity to go, hey, how do I open up and create avenues where I can start to share this information and this wisdom and these tools so that others can benefit from the things that I've been benefiting from for the last 25 years. And I'm at that stage now of like, okay, I'm going to move into a greater state of service. And that's where I'm at. I wrote a book called Free for Life, A Navy SEAL's Unique Path to Inner Freedom and Outer Peace. And I want people to know, people who've been in situations like mine, that look, there's a way out of hell, right? There's a way into peace. There's a way into freedom, and it's simple. And all it requires is a little bit of effort, a little bit of time, a little bit of energy, and a little bit of resources. And if you're willing to take a little bit of a risk, you can get a hell of a lot of reward. And
wow.
And, I think I look at myself now in terms of self-assessment. My mind is quiet. My emotions are grounded. My body is super, super comfortable, very strong, and my energy is abundant at all times.
Mm.
And who wouldn't want that? I mean,
Yeah.
imagine what the world would be like if you had, 8 billion people running around with abundant amounts of energy, super quiet, still minds, very grounded, balanced emotions,
Mm.
and clear thoughts, and really comfortable, strong bodies. And we had 8 billion people walking around like that.
Mm. Sounds so
And
peaceful.
it sounds so peaceful, right? Because then
Yeah.
when your mind is quiet, you add nothing, you take nothing away, you see things for what they are because you're operating from a position of neutrality.
Mm.
You judgment, disapproval, excessive criticism, an over moralizing position, those are no longer available to you. And if
Mhm.
you do drop into it for a moment, you notice that you're doing it and you take a
Mhm.
half step back and you take ownership of your projection as an opportunity to look at your own inner deficiencies.
Yeah. A lot of people are too busy using the outer things to escape all that because they're afraid of it, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe we're
it's,
afraid
yeah,
of knowing ourselves.
yeah, I think, fear um, is something that has been inherent in the human condition for
Mm.
thousands of years. Okay, thousands of years.
Yeah.
Like, look, in the times of Yeshua, if you were to get caught stealing a loaf of bread,
Mm.
they could crucify you.
Yeah.
Okay, they could hang you. Right. Look, obviously, the person's stealing the bread because they're starving. So the
Right.
system that you set up isn't working. Okay. Yeah, you're profiting. And because this man isn't giving you money, you're unwilling to give this man bread.
Mm.
And so a lot of the systems that have been developed from fear-based strategies.
Right.
And, you look at the level of degradation that women have dealt with for thousands of years.
Yep.
And the strategies that men use to emasculate them, to not to emasculate them, to defeminize them.
Mm.
And now men are pissed because women are highly intelligent, right? Are
Mm-hmm.
more emotionally developed, are
Mm-hmm.
more community conscious, and stepping to greater positions of leadership.
Right.
And men are being pushed out of these positions because they're underdeveloped,
Right. The
right?
feminine is starting to show like it's
Yes,
supposed to.
that's right. Because
Yeah.
this isn't, we don't call this Father Earth. We call it
Right.
Mother Earth. There's a reason why we call it Mother Earth. I mean, it would
Yeah.
make sense to me that women would be in positions of leadership because they're more connected to the birthing process,
Yep.
right? The flower, the seed, it's a birthing process. The lion that has a cub, it's a birthing process.
Right.
The cow that has a calf, it's a birthing process. Men know how to lay seeds, but they don't know how to care for things in the
Mm.
way that women do. So, part of what I want to continue to do is to get tools into women's hands so they can get into greater positions of leadership. Because I see how far the male mind has taken things, and I
Mm.
look at the level of degradation that we have at a social level, at an emotional level, at a communal level, at a familial level. And these strategies that are in place in this mechanism and structure that we set up that's been male driven, it's pulling the family units apart,
Right.
which is leading to devastating levels of lack of intimacy.
Yeah.
People are focused on things rather than focused on people.
Yep.
And women are generally more focused on people. Men are generally more focused on things. But if there isn't dual leadership strategies, we end up too far to the left or we end up too far to the right. And so I'm happy to be on, I actually prefer to be on podcasts with women
Hmm.
because women are more likely to share
Mm-hmm.
and give information to other women that they think would help them. Where I worked with a lot of professional male athletes. I helped a lot of guys that were on teams that weren't winning when, NFL championships, win World Series, and they never shared the information they gave them with any of their other players. But if I were to help a woman pro athlete, she would want all the women on her team to benefit from it, right? And so that cooperative nature that women have versus that competitive nature, I think is the energy that we need to tap into over the next 20 to 30 years in order to make sure that we can secure a evolutionary footing for humanity.
Yeah.
You know, we need women in positions of leadership and guidance and coaching to help usher in the new systems that will be to the benefit of a greater magnitude and population of people. I've seen the male model run its course. I wish it worked to the benefit of everyone. The reality is it doesn't. It separates, it's competitive, it's non-cooperative, and it's isolating. And the more you isolate men, the more they focus and lean on stoicism, and the more they lean on things to satisfy them versus leaning into people and community and family.
Yeah, I'm 73 now, and I see all the generations, you know, and how things have changed. And men just don't talk about their emotions. You know, I love you. Okay, fine. You know, and that's it. You don't get the flowers. You don't, you know, get a cooked meal or, you know, the hug when you want it, whatever. Most men have been that way, or they've been just about getting a piece of ass.
Yeah.
And as a woman, I was always much deeper than that. I wanted somebody to connect with. And I grew up in a spiritual atmosphere, I'd say. I never went to church. When I was 17, I guess I went with a boyfriend or so, but I couldn't tell you the Bible. I read Revelations probably 50 years ago. And I thought, what horror movie is this, you know? And I do some speaking, public speaking, and at one of them, I said, COVID was the best thing that happened. And it's like, what? I said, I spent 2 years in the garden playing in God's dirt, in his sunshine, with his critters and his plants. I didn't hear any of this negativity. I felt so fulfilled, and I am so happy. And I was inspired last October that my spiritual experiences, I needed to share them. And I've always wanted to write my story. I never had children, but yet I feel my story is important. So I was talking to this guy and his wife, and he said, you need to write your story now. And I looked at him, I said, yes, I do. So I wrote my first book, and it's Heaven Sent, Sent. And it's about my spiritual experiences.
I love it.
And
Clever.
it launches this weekend.
That's
so
amazing.
I'm so excited for that. And I have a story in there, and I know this is your podcast, but this is kind of what we're talking.
Hey, this is we're
this
here
is a sharing.
We're here to co-create together.
Right. Well, so several years ago, I bought 20 acres in Iowa. I'm from there. And 2 weeks before I finalized the purchase, I saw myself in prayer position on my knees, facing west in the center of the property. And as I'm in that position, I see this rod of light from my belly button going into the earth and up into the sky at the same time. I thought, whoa, what is this? You know? So I had no idea. Well, I took Healing Touch for people and animals. And in that study, it's the hara, the connection between earth and, you know, making us as one.
Yeah.
And that is also on the cover of my book. There is me, my podcast picture, and without the podcast part, but me and this rolling clouds behind, the storm clouds, and this rod of light coming from my head up. And both of them are significant to me because, and it's on a purple background, which is my spiritual color. And the rolling clouds are like the thunder clouds without the lightning, and they're rolling forward. You know how they boil and they're rolling forward. And to me, that's like pushing me forward, pushing me out there to share my story. I'm not at all ashamed of what has happened to me in my life. And I thank God for every bit of it, because the good, the bad, the ugly, all made me who I am today. And I'm an open book. I don't care. I've told people, I don't give a rat's ass what somebody thinks about me. I'm too old to care. I cared in the past, and people have tried to hurt you. your own female co-workers would try to hurt you with their words. And I just brushed it off. I was somewhat of a loner because I didn't fit in, but I wasn't a loner at all. I'm a very social person, and I love to talk, as you can tell. So, and that's why I started the podcast and now the speaking career. And it all started because I said yes to an opportunity. And in a year, I've just come so far. I'm so proud of myself. At 72, I did all that. And now I share my story with the world and with people through you doing things like this. And it's changing. The world is ready for the change, and it's coming. And
Oh yeah.
and it's just fascinating and so inspiring to be a part of that change, to help that change come around. It just excites me so. And I'm so happy I have you on my podcast. You are intriguing.
Thank you. I relate to a lot of the things that you're saying. You know, there's this unique time in society where people like you and people like me and other podcasters and podcast guests get to dip into a medium that allows them to be authentic, minus the bravado, and reach people who want to hear a clear, inspiring message that they relate to. And, you know, I hope that the inspiration impacts them as motivation, so they take a little bit of risk to their own benefit. Because, you know, to get someone to purchase your book or to purchase my book, it's a risk, right? They're going to invest, I don't know, $15 or $25 or $40 or something. And they're going to get an opportunity to relate to a story that hopefully allows them to take heartfelt action to their own benefit. And we need this medium, right? There's people want this medium, and I'm happy to be here in service. So one of the things that I think is really important for the listener to understand is that they have to have a strategy, right? Everyone is under stress. And when you increase your self-awareness to a level where you can feel your anxiety building and you're aware that you're getting anxious, you want to be able to interrupt the pattern, right? If you're aware that you're becoming increasingly more angry with the way that your son or husband or coworkers talking to you, you have to have a way in order to interrupt that pattern. If you find yourself becoming increasingly more fearful, you want to have a way of interrupting that pattern. If you find yourself becoming increasingly more self-righteous, meaning judgmental, disapproving of others, excessively critical, overly moralizing, you want to be able to interfere with that pattern. And so I want the listeners on your podcast to walk away with the tool. It's very simple. It's easy to implement. It costs $0 and a short amount of time.
That's great.
So listeners, you're here, you're in one of those dynamics, you're communicating with someone, whether it's over the phone, it could be you want to change your flight and now they want to charge you an extra $250, and you're really upset about this, right? And you're not getting anywhere. They won't give you access to the manager, and they only keep pointing you back to the website to go in and enter your credit card information and pay the extra $250. Or you've got your wife is upset because you told her you would take out the trash 2 days ago, and she came home from work and she walks in the kitchen and she smells trash, right? And now she's pissed and she wants to tell you, I tell you this all the time, and and now you start to get like angry inside with the way that she's talking to you. So the easiest way to deal with all of this is to start breathing relative to the level of feeling that you're having. So let's say your anxiety is gone from a 10 to like a 30. Well, 30 would be reflective of 30% of your breath, right? In terms of rate and depth. So instead of breathing normally, you would increase your breathing rate by 30%, depth and rate. And let's say It's a different situation, and you're talking to your brother and he's pissing you off, and now you're getting angry and you feel your anger is at like a 60, and now you're about to say something that is going to fracture your relationship. The fastest thing, the easiest thing to do is to interrupt the pattern with your breath. So just say, hey, look, Jake, I'm going to call you back in 10 minutes so we can finish this discussion. Okay. I need to take a breather. Okay. Boom. Hang up the phone, sit down in a chair, and you start breathing relative to the level of anger. So if your anger is a 60 out of 100, you bring your breath up to a 6. What does a 6 sound like? If your anxiety is 100 out of 100, what are you going to do? You're going to bring your breath up to 100 out of 100 until you feel that anxiety drop down. And here's the interesting thing about the body is you can always use the breath because it controls the emotional body. You can always use the breath to interfere with whichever base state that you're locked into that's inappropriate. And what I mean inappropriate, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Okay. You can always use your breath to interrupt that inappropriate stress state. That's an easy thing to do. Okay. But let's say the dynamic's different. You're in the kitchen and you're with your husband or wife, and one of you spent more money than you agreed on. And now some checks are going to start bouncing, and whoever the main provider is feeling under more pressure. Well, if you're in person, you just simply say, look, I'm really, really, really sorry for not discussing with you. Well, for avoiding discussing with you that I was going to spend this money. Right. And then you say, I'm starting to feel really anxious, or I'm starting to feel really angry. I'm starting to feel really judgmental, and I need to take a 5-minute break. Go to the bedroom, hop in the shower, and rinse off. Dry off, put your clothes back on, lie down in your bed or sit at the edge of your bed and start breathing relative to what you're feeling. You have to create a pattern interrupt. Now, your nervous system's back to neutrality. Now you can engage again in that conversation. People need a successful pattern interrupt, because when we use words, we can use them as tools for building and sharing love and affection and attention and sensuality, or we can use words as weapons.
Yeah.
And when you use a word as a weapon, the chances that that relationship is going to fail are greater. They're much, much greater.
And we aren't taught over the years to communicate very well.
No, I mean, we're not well, it's impossible to communicate well when you're locked into an inappropriate stress state, right?
Right.
Because a male's natural state is stoicism. I'm going to contain and control my feelings or emotions because men are physically typically stronger than women. And the chances that a man could physically harm a woman if he doesn't go into a containment strategy is super, super, super high, right? Well, it's 2023. So men 200 years ago, they were not required to contain their anger, right? They were allowed to just haul off and slap a woman. They were allowed to do that. That was acceptable societal behavior. In fact, I remember, my grandmother used to love to watch these old films and these old musicals. And you would see in the movies, husband would be upset and he'd slap the woman, and the woman would go, oh, but I'm so sorry, honey. Right. And it was like this, it was delivered as like this dramatic sensual experience. And there's nothing sensual about violence.
No.
Okay. But now the strategies that men have to employ if they don't want to go to prison, they have to employ excessive containment and control strategies, because women have stood up and said, look, I'm allowed to voice my opinion, and I am unwilling to participate in you beating me up for me voicing my opinion. And so men have had to lean into stoicism, stoic strategies. And the challenge with stoic strategies is they disallow for the processing of the emotion. If you can't process the emotion, it makes it impossible to communicate your feelings and ideas around what you're experiencing that's overwhelming. And so then what do men do? They lean on more stoicism, or they walk out the door, slam it, hop in the truck, drive to the pub. Okay. They knock back a few, 16 ounces. They come back home 4 hours later. They slip between the sheets quietly, wake up, go to work, dust it under the rug, and try to start all over again. And a woman is still sitting here with all these feelings, emotions, and ideas. And so then she's going to do what? She's either going to lean on some sugar, which is the main thing that women do. And they like to lean on white or brown sugar, or they lean on fermented sugar, which is wine. Right? And so they numb out. And then 3 weeks later, they're back in the kitchen, similar conversation. The husband employs a similar strategy, and they're back at square one again. A woman has that experience over and over and over for 15 years. And then one day she wakes up and goes, I can no longer participate. I'm getting a lawyer and we're getting divorced. And then she hopes that, guess what? I'm going to meet a guy. She's still fantasizing. I'm going to meet a new guy and he's going to have a different strategy. But the reality is that most men have the same strategy because it's been uncomfortable and viewed by society as weak. If a man communicates and sets a boundary around his feelings and or his emotions, or mostly his overwhelm. And so what I want to impart to men, if you're a listener, what I want to impart to wives, if you're a listener married to a man, is give your man an opportunity to just simply admit that he's overwhelmed. And I think as a man, all you need to say is, honey, I'm overwhelmed. And she keeps going, right? She's now angry, so she keeps going. And he simply says, honey, I'm overwhelmed. I don't care if you're overwhelmed. No, you think you're overwhelmed? I'm overwhelmed too. Tuesday, honey, I'm overwhelmed. And he says the same thing until she stops and goes, oh my God, you're overwhelmed. Why are you overwhelmed? Because I don't know how to respond to the situation. Right? And so that would be the prudent thing to do. That would be the brave, that would be the courageous thing to do. And so as the man's walking towards the door and he gets that door open 6 to 18 inches, he's got two choices. Take the next step on past the threshold of the doorway, or close the door, turn around and say, babe, I'm overwhelmed. And keep repeating the same thing until she goes and realizes, oh my God, he doesn't know how to play ping pong with me here, right? Because he was raised in a household like most men in the United States have been raised in, where there was a lot of emotional overwhelm and there was very little teaching from mother to son on how to process and effectively communicate their feelings and ideas and experiences in a safe environment. And if men do not have that model, and mothers refuse to teach their sons the emotional world, what's going to continue to happen? Women are going to continue to marry men who are physically evolved, right? Financially evolved, mentally evolved, and socially inept. Socially and emotionally inept. And as that continues, guess what? They're going to move into dissatisfaction, right? Feelings of loneliness, feelings of confusion, feelings of frustration and agitation. And then when the same dynamic is raised again, they're going to employ the same exact strategy. And those strategies, they just don't work to get men who've leaned on stoicism and only know stoicism as a way of feeling safe. So if you're a female on the call and you have male children, you need to draw out the ABCs of communication and create a safe environment for them to share their feelings without punishment, rejection, humiliation, and violence. And if you can do that for the next 3 or 4 generations as a whole, women, if they can do that, you will be passing men off to women to marry, where women can have a productive, deep, emotionally satisfying relationship the rest of their life. And if women as a race are unwilling to do that, the women generations from now are only going to get what women get right now.
Right.
And so, you know, these are conversations that I feel are necessary for the evolution of humanity. Because as men lean on stoicism, they become more addicted to negative stress management tools. And the more addicted they become to negative stress management tools, the more dense their brain gets. And if you marry a man with a dense brain, he has access to less emotions and feelings. And he certainly will have a difficult time communicating from the position that he's inappropriately locked into. Right?
I've said that I would want a man that's strong enough to cry. And a lot of people don't understand what I meant by that. I'm currently with Robert, and I asked God to provide the man in my life that he wants me to be with. Not necessarily the one I think I love, because I've made enough mistakes in the past. 2 weeks later, he contacts me. And it's been over 18 years now. Is he perfect? No. Am I? No. But we've made it 18 plus years so far. And he listens. He doesn't share as much as I'd like, perhaps, because of the way he was raised, and he's Hispanic. But we get along. We have a lot of the same things, and he has had tears. And I think that is such a strong thing for a man to express, not the blubbering idiot like some women can be as well, but strong enough that to wipe away that tear or have them run down your face. I think that's an endearing quality. And I think more men, if they can develop that part, like you're saying, oh yeah, it'll make life so much easier for everybody.
Yeah, it'll be a more safe place.
Yes.
And yet it starts with mothers communicating and teaching their sons about the emotional world, right? Like if a dad has a daughter, he teaches her how to change the oil in her car, he teaches her how to fix a flat, he teaches her how to protect herself. He teaches her all the things that she needs to know when she's dealing with men. But women typically do not share the emotional world. And I get it, because the emotional world was the only world that they had that men wouldn't penetrate into. Because, 2000 years ago, a man controlled every aspect of reality.
Yeah.
And so I get it. But at the end of the day, as a race, right, as a gender, if women want to have more productive, safe, inspiring, satisfactory relationships with men, they have to start to prepare the next generation of men for the evolved women that are on the planet now, because a woman can do everything that a man can do.
Right.
And sometimes better. And a woman can do all the things that a woman can do, but a man cannot do all the things that a woman can do. He can do things really well that a man can do. And so men are basically handicapped and women are dissatisfied. And so what's the prudent action to take? The mothers have to teach their sons about clear communication through inspiration in a safe environment. And they have to teach men about emotions and feelings, and that it's a safe place for them to express themselves. And if mothers can begin to do that for the next 30, 40 years, we're going to have some very evolved men on the planet. And I think the planet can change the course of direction that it's been in at a society level, in terms of all the systems, the financial system, the educational systems, there's going to be more space and room for men and women to evolve together.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The family unit's going to be more important.
Yeah. The family unit will then start to become more important again. It'll become the foundation, because it'll feel like a safe place. But when the family unit feels like an unsafe place for a man, the man is going to leave the home very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Like as fast as he can, he is going to get out of there.
Because he doesn't know how to deal with it.
Yep. Because he doesn't know how to deal. He doesn't know how to participate in a way that feels safe and good to him.
Yeah.
And so he's going to get locked into 3 categories that he will be judged by: his ability to produce, his ability to provide, and his ability to protect. And men are so much more than that.
Right. Yeah. It takes both to complement each other, because a man has these qualities, a woman has these, and if you can combine them, and maybe even, where he may be lacking on something, then she can lead, if that's the word.
Yeah. I mean, they can become more interdependent.
Yes. Thank you.
Right. Yeah. Because leadership essentially is a feminine quality, because it's communal, and leadership is cooperative. Right.
Yeah.
That makes it more feminine in nature. So I think these subjects that we've tapped into today are probably good subjects for people.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I've learned a lot, and I love to learn. So if people want to hear more about you, how will they do that?
I mean, the easiest thing is to go to truebodyintelligence.com.
Okay.
And when you go to truebodyintelligence.com, there's a course there called the 8 Stepping Stones to Inner Freedom, where I give a very deep level of education. And then I use transmutative meditations to transmute negative subtle energy into positive subtle energy, which is enormous for anyone who's on a path of spiritual development and emotional development. And then obviously they can get my book. There's an audio version on my website.
And what is the book again?
The name of the book is called Free for Life. The subtext is a U.S. Navy SEAL's path to inner freedom and outer peace. If anyone on the call, any one of your listeners, if their highest value is freedom, then you got to get on the freedom train. Because, the freedom train is where it's at, right? We're going to reduce your tension and your stress. We're going to quiet your mind. We're going to help you ground your emotions. And we're going to help you become productive where you're non-productive, where you apply non-productive strategies like stoicism, anger, anxiety, fear, self-righteousness. Get into a place where everything in your life is very smooth and you're accomplishing what you want through ease versus struggle and strife. And, you can start that pathway. You can start getting on the freedom train by going to truebodyintelligence.com.
Okay.
And if you want to get in contact with me, you email support@truebodyintelligence.com, and my assistant, Christina, will get back to you quickly and send you a 1 sheet of the steps that you need to take in order for us to have a connection call. And if you're willing to jump through hoops and be vested energetically and emotionally, then I'm willing to help you out with the things that I know.
Yeah, it's good to share.
Yeah.
What good is it if you have it all in yourself and you don't share it?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So is there anything we could mention yet that we haven't touched on?
No, I think this is a lot for people to process, because I go to a depth that most people rarely think at. And my suggestion is listen to this particular podcast like 3 or 4 times while you're on your drive to work or home from work or at the gym, because, once you understand these and you're able to grok these concepts and implement these strategies into your life, you're going to have a better life. And everything that I taught you today, the only thing that's required is to listen a few times and to implement the strategies. It costs you no money. It costs you a little bit of time, maybe it's a little risky, right, for you to ask someone to put the phone down so you can go breathe and rinse off and take a shower really quickly so that you can come back from a neutral, balanced place. But you know what? No risk it, no biscuit.
And it's interesting that you say to go take the shower, because to me, like when you're doing healing touch and you work on the person, you go wash your hands. It's
That's
a way
right.
to cleanse your aura.
That's right.
And
cleanse your
then you
aura.
start from the
Yep.
neutral position. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Neutrality is the ascended state, right? It
Yeah.
adds nothing, it takes nothing away. It only sees things for what they are from a compassionate position. Who would want any less than that? You know who would? Anyone who's highly stressed.
Yeah. And recognizes it.
Yeah.
And wants to fix it.
Yeah. So do everything you can to shift out of stress ignorance, and do everything you can to reduce your addiction to the daily acceptable drugs, right? Those are called negative stress management tools: nicotine, caffeine, alcohol, refined white and brown sugar, sugarcane, marijuana, recreational, pharmaceutical drugs, pornography, hate, dishonesty. Like, do everything you can to break those strategies. And as you do, it's going to open up an opportunity for you to tap into positive stress management tools. Sit down in front of a mirror, have an honest conversation with yourself, ask your soul some basic questions, right? When you feel yourself getting too anxious or too angry or too hot emotionally or too judgmental or too fearful, take a few deep breaths. Step away from the environment that you're in, come back to neutrality, then enter back into the situation, communicate clearly, admit where you're overwhelmed to those that you care about. And again, honesty is the best policy. If you're unwilling to take a look at yourself and to investigate, you're only going to end up in the same exact dynamic 3 weeks later, and you're going to apply the same strategy that's going to continue to defeat you and keep you from feeling safe, happy, joyful, present, grounded, and peaceful.
And I would say, for me, how I started, I guess, if you don't know how to ask or to talk to yourself or whatever, one simple question out there, just God or whoever, your higher power, whatever you want to call, even if you're talking to yourself, just ask, what do I need to do? Lead me, put it in front of me, whatever, show me what I need to do to get started on a path to a better life.
Yeah, because the universe is conspiring at every moment to your benefit.
Yes.
Always conspiring to your benefit. If you ask, something will happen. If you ask not, you'll always get the same.
You'll always get what you always got.
Take a little bit of risk,
yeah,
right? What we perceive, we believe, and what we believe, we achieve. So create a pattern interrupt. And thank you so much for listening to our powerful conversation. I hope this was impactful for you and for the listeners. I've had a great time. I appreciate you stepping into the world, following your intuition, and using prayer as an opportunity to create a better life for yourself. And I'm very happy to be here today, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Christopher. And so with that, I'm going to toodaloo out. Okay. Thank you for tuning in to my Common Sense Living podcast today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm sure you learned something new. Please leave a kind review and share this episode with a friend. And be sure to subscribe yourself. You'll find me on iTunes, Spotify, and other platforms. And don't forget, we'll be here again next week with another insightful episode of Common Sense Living. I can hardly wait.